Okay, in this third and final video, we're going to look at just a harder problem regarding our cylinders and our prism surface area lesson. So in this case, we have basically a composite. So I know it may be a little bit hard to see, but if you look at what's going on here is we have this prism and then we have the cylinder that's kind of like removed. Okay, so you can almost think of it like so it's like drilled through, there's like a hole in it, right? And we're now gonna paint this thing, but remember what's gonna happen. So the surface area again is when we paint it. So when we paint it, in this case, right, we're gonna paint our walls. So we have wall one, so we have all the outer walls of our prism that we're used to finding. But imagine that again that you're painting this light green, wouldn't you also paint the walls on the inside? Right? So the walls on the inside of this thing, and I don't know how to really kind of indicate that I'm painting that. Okay, but I'm painting the inside of those walls. So now we have this kind of this weird thing that's the outside of the prism is considered the surface area, but so also is that inner hole, there's surface area or exposed air area to air, you could say, that's also being that we have to deal with. Okay, add in when we're talking about the surface area of this figure. So, as always, let's see what we can do. So we're going to break this up in a couple pieces. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find the area of, well, let's brainstorm it a little bit. Let's actually, before we do anything, let's see if we can brainstorm what we have to do. So I think you'd agree. First thing, one of the things I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to find the surface area of the prism. So I'm going to say surface area of prism. Okay, so of my rectangular prism. So that's kind of all the outer parts of the box. Okay, then I'm going to have to, then if you think about it, there's the lateral wall. So let's kind of look at that cylinder really quickly, right? So I'm kind of pulling that cylinder out. I'm going to have to find those lateral walls of the cylinder. That's that rectangle that we talked about before. That's going to be part that I'm going to be painting on. So I'm going to have to find that lateral surface area. I'm going to have to add it to the prism. But notice the bases themselves, those are air. So they're not going to be there. In fact, I have to remove them from the surface area of the prism. So in the end, what this is going to look like, right, is I'm going to add to this, I'm going to say the lateral surface area of the prism, of the cylinder. And then finally, I'm going to subtract these two holes because those are air, right? So I have to remove them. So minus my two bases. And you might be saying, well, why do they have to remove them if we just don't take them into account? But remember, we covered them up. When we were going to find the surface area of the rectangular prism, we included those small circles. So we have to remove them. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So let's go through and actually do the math. So let's start with the prism. Okay, actually, I'm going to remove this right here just so I have some room to continue looking at my diagram. Okay, so let's start with the prism. So the surface area of prism, we already know that. That's going to be the perimeter times the height plus our two bases. In this case, I think you would agree, our perimeter, I'm just going to call it P for short. Our perimeter, right, is the distance around this base. So there's two 24s, two 16s. So 24 times 2 plus 16 times 2. Cleaning that up, I end up getting 80. Okay, so that's our perimeter. Then our height is going to be 20. Okay, so that gives us that piece. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's do our base also. So, and a base, I think you'd agree, is 24 by 16. Which is 384. So if I want to go find the total surface area of the prism, the surface, I'm going to say surface area prism for short, prism, is going to be our perimeter, which is 80, times our height, which is 20, plus our two bases, 2 times 384. And I get, for that, I get 2,668 feet squared. Okay, that's the area, that's the surface area of our prism. But now we got to deal with the cylinder. So I'm going to just start dealing with the cylinder things. But remember, when we do with the cylinder, we're going to add the laterals. We're going to add the lateral side, but subtract the bases. So let's go to cylinder. Actually, you know what? Let's do this in a different color to make it easier to read. So cylinder. So as we know, for a cylinder, let's think of what we have to do. We need to know what is the perimeter, which in this case we said, as always, is the circumference of the circle. So that's 2 pi r, where r is 4 feet. So that's 2 pi times 4, which is 8 pi. Then we need to know the height, which again, the height is exactly the same as the height of the prism. So that's 20. And then finally, we need to know what a base is. So in this case, a base is pi r squared. So pi 4 squared, which equals 16 pi. Okay, so let's put this all together. Now, I want to remind you, in this case, let's think about what's going to happen. I'm going to kind of highlight this. So we're going to have this piece right here. If we multiply those two together, we take the perimeter and multiply it to the height. So if I take the perimeter times the height, that's the lateral area. And we want to add that to our prism. But remember, the bases are the holes in the box, and we want to remove them. So if these things are added, then this right here is going to be subtracted from our total surface area. Okay? So let's go and put it together. So first, let's take our prism. So remember how we did this. So let's kind of set this up again. So I'm going to say surface area prism. So if you don't mind, I'm going to call it prism for short. So prism plus, now remember we're talking about the lateral area of the cylinder. So I'm going to say lateral area, so I abbreviated lateral area of cylinder minus the two bases. So putting that together, our surface area of our prism, we said was 2,368. Our lateral area of our cylinder, well, that's perimeter times height, so that's 8 pi times 20. And then finally, we have the two bases, so minus 2, and each of those bases is 16 pi. So cleaning that up, we're going to get, so 2,368, that's 160 minus 32, or 1 plus 128 pi, and our units are feet squared. Okay? So that was our composite figure, and that's going to always be the idea. You just need to figure out what are you adding, what are you subtracting. You got to look at each piece individually and think about them. That's going to be the key here. You just have to think about these.